The rain hammered against the diner window like a warning Jack Reeves should have heeded. His hands moved on autopilot, wiping down the counter for the third time that hour, while his mind remained trapped 10 years in the past. The night he'd made a choice that cost him everything. A flash of lightning illuminated the street outside, and for a moment, the neon sign of Jack's Place cast an eerie glow over a small wheelchair sitting motionless in the downpour. A child no older than 8 slumped forward, her clothes soaked through. Something about the way she sat there, silent, accepting, as if she'd learned long ago that help never comes, made his chest tighten. The coffee mug in his hand clattered against the counter as another memory surfaced. His daughter Mia's face the night they'd lost her mother. The same resignation. The same quiet despair. Before he could think twice, Jack pushed open the door and stepped into the rain. The child looked up as he approached, her dark hair plastered against her pale face. In that split second, Jack saw his own daughter's eyes staring back at him. Not the Mia who lived with him now, angry and distant, but the one he'd lost the night his wife died. He crouched beside the wheelchair, balancing a steaming mug of hot chocolate. "Stormy night to be sitting outside," he said gently. The girl studied him with eyes too old for her face. She didn't reach for the mug immediately, just watched the steam rise, as if it were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. "My caregiver went to get my medicine," she finally whispered. "She told me to wait here." Jack glanced up and down the empty street. The pharmacy was 3 blocks away and had been closed for over an hour. Something cold settled in his stomach, not anger exactly, but a weary recognition. He'd seen this before. People who took jobs caring for vulnerable children because it paid better than retail, then treated them like inconvenient packages. "How about waiting inside where it's dry?" He stood, joints protesting. "I've got a booth by the heater, and I make a decent grilled cheese if you're hungry." The girl looked up at him, then really looked, and Jack saw the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing risk against cold and hunger, trying to decide if this stranger was dangerous or just tired. "I'm Jack. I own this place." He gestured to the diner behind him. "My daughter Mia's upstairs doing homework. She's 7. You look about her age, maybe a little older." Something shifted in the girl's expression. Not quite trust, but curiosity. She reached for the mug with both hands, and Jack noticed the way her fingers trembled, not from cold, but from something else. Some kind of muscle condition, maybe. She took a sip, closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there were tears streaming down her cheeks. Not sad tears, relief tears. The kind that come when someone's been holding themselves together for so long that the smallest kindness cracks them open. "I'm Emily," she said, offering a fragile smile. "Emily Parker." Jack pushed the wheelchair toward the diner door, and Emily didn't protest. Inside, the warm air enveloped them, carrying the permanent scent of coffee and fried onions, the comforting aroma of a place that had served working people for 40 years. He settled Emily at the corner booth, the one with the best view of the street so she could watch for her caregiver, and went to work on the grill. As he moved through the familiar motions, bread, butter, cheese, flip, he kept one eye on the girl. Emily sat very still. The kind of stillness that suggested conserving energy was a learned survival skill. Her clothes were expensive, he noticed now. Designer labels on the jacket, good quality shoes. Not the kind of kid who should be sitting alone in the rain outside a rundown diner in this neighborhood. When he brought over the sandwich, she ate slowly, deliberately, like someone who'd been taught proper manners and actually remembered them. Between bites, she asked questions. What kind of diner was this? How long had he owned it? Did Mia like school? "My mom works a lot," she said after a while, unprompted. "She runs a big company, Parker Pharmaceuticals. She's trying to develop new heart medications." Her small fingers traced the rim of her empty mug. "I have a heart condition. That's why I need medicine all the time. That's why I can't run or play like other kids." Jack felt something twist in his chest. He thought about Mia upstairs, healthy and whole, except for the anger that lived in her like a second heartbeat. He thought about all the things he'd taken for granted before everything fell apart. Before he could respond, the bell above the door chimed, and he looked up to see a woman step inside. She was tall, probably late 30s, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes, the same warm brown as Emily's, swept the diner with the kind of sharp assessment that made Jack straighten involuntarily. Emily. The woman's voice was calm, but Jack heard the crack underneath. Baby, are you all right? Emily's face transformed completely. Mom, this is Jack. He gave me hot chocolate and grilled cheese. His daughter's upstairs. The woman crossed the diner in 4 long strides, knelt beside the wheelchair, and ran her hands over Emily's arms and face like she was checking for injuries. Only when she seemed satisfied did she look up at Jack, and the gratitude in her eyes was so raw, it made him uncomfortable. Thank you, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I got a call that Ellen, Emily's caregiver, had some kind of emergency and abandoned her post. I was in a board meeting downtown and broke every traffic law getting here. She stood up, extending her hand. I'm Olivia Parker, and I owe you more than I can say. Jack shrugged, suddenly aware of his stained apron. Just gave her a warm place to wait. Anyone would have done the same. Olivia's expression suggested she doubted that very much. She glanced around the diner, taking in the cracked vinyl booths and the ancient jukebox in the corner, and something in her face softened. This is a good place, she said quietly. Safe. Jack thought about all the reasons that wasn't true. The neighborhood, the occasional fights that spilled in from the bar next door, his own past lurking in every shadow. But he just nodded. When they finally left, Olivia pausing at the door to thank him again. Jack stood at the window and watched them climb into a sleek black car that probably cost more than his entire building. He felt Mia's presence before he heard her footsteps on the stairs. Was that the girl you were talking to? His daughter's voice was flat, carefully devoid of interest. She was getting good at that, pretending not to care about anything. Jack turned to face her. At 7 years old, Mia looked so much like her mother it hurt. Same auburn hair, same stubborn chin, same way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. Yeah, her name's Emily. She was waiting for her mom in the rain. Mia crossed her arms. You shouldn't have let her in. What if she was dangerous? Jack felt the familiar ache of trying to bridge the canyon between them. She's 8 years old and uses a wheelchair. I think we were safe. That's not the point. Mia's voice rose slightly. You're always doing this, helping people, trying to fix things. It doesn't bring Mom back. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Jack wanted to explain that helping Emily had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with being human. But Mia was already turning away, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. He listened to her bedroom door slam and wondered, not for the first time, if he'd ever find a way back to his daughter. 3 days later, Olivia Parker walked back into his diner. It was early afternoon, the dead zone between lunch and dinner, when the place was empty except for old Harold dozing in his usual booth. She was dressed more casually this time, jeans and a sweater, but she still carried herself like someone accustomed to boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. Jack looked up from restocking napkin dispensers and felt his stomach drop. She had the look of someone who discovered something important, and in his experience, that was never good news. We need to talk, Olivia said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. About your past. Jack's hands stilled. He set down the napkins very carefully and met her eyes. I figured you'd run a background check eventually. Olivia didn't flinch. I run them on everyone who comes near my daughter. It's not personal, but what I found. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Jack Reeves, former detective with Metro Police, decorated for bravery twice, then fired 10 years ago for accepting bribes and allowing a major suspect to escape. That suspect, Raymond Scott, allegedly died in a car accident 3 months later. Your wife died the same night, killed in what police called a random mugging that was never solved. She leaned forward. Except Raymond Scott didn't die, did he? Jack felt the blood drain from his face. For a moment, the diner seemed to tilt sideways. What are you talking about? Olivia pulled out her phone and turned it toward him. On the screen was a surveillance photo from what looked like a corporate building. The image was grainy, but Jack would have recognized that face anywhere. Older, harder, but unmistakably Raymond Scott. The man Jack had taken money from. The man whose brother had died during the arrest Jack had deliberately botched. The man who'd sworn revenge and then vanished into the night. This was taken 2 days ago at my company headquarters, Olivia said quietly. He's been working as a security consultant under an assumed name for the past 6 months. I didn't recognize him until I started digging into your history and saw his photo. He's been there the whole time, right under my nose. Jack's mind raced. Raymond Scott alive. Raymond Scott working for Olivia's company. Raymond Scott close to Emily. You need to fire him. Today. Now. I did this morning. Olivia's expression was grim. He didn't take it well. Jack, I think he's been planning something. When I went through his work computer, I found files he shouldn't have had access to. Research formulas, security protocols. He's been mapping out my schedule, Emily's schedule, even our route home. Jack felt cold clarity settle over him. This was what he'd been afraid of for 10 years. Raymond Scott had let him live with his guilt, let him think he was safe, and now the debt was coming due. He's going to come after Emily to get to you, to hurt you through your daughter the way he thinks I hurt his brother. Olivia's jaw tightened. Let him try. I have security. Security won't stop him. Jack's voice was hard. I know Raymond. He's patient. He's smart. And he doesn't care who he has to go through to get what he wants. You need to go to the police. And tell them what? That a man who's legally dead is plotting something based on my paranoid interpretation of some computer files. Olivia shook her head. They'll think I'm hysterical. The truth is, I don't have enough proof for a restraining order, let alone an arrest. She looked at Jack with something that might have been desperation or determination. He couldn't tell which. But you know him. You know how he thinks. Help me protect my daughter. Every instinct Jack had screamed at him to say no, to walk away, to keep his head down like he'd been doing for a decade. But then he thought about Emily sitting in the rain, about the way she'd looked at him with those old wise eyes. He thought about Mia upstairs, angry and hurting, and so desperately needing proof that her father was still someone worth believing in. He thought about his wife bleeding out on a dark street because Raymond Scott wanted Jack to know what loss felt like. I'll help you, Jack said, but you need to understand something. I'm not a good man. The things I did, the choices I made, they got people killed, including my wife. If you let me into your life, into Emily's life, you're taking a risk. Olivia stood up and extended her hand. Jack, we both know the biggest risk is doing nothing. So let's do something. They shook on it, and Jack felt the weight of old promises and new debts settling across his shoulders like chains. Outside, clouds were gathering again, and somewhere in the city, Raymond Scott was planning his revenge. The next 72 hours moved with the surreal quality of a nightmare Jack couldn't wake from. Olivia hired him as Emily's temporary caregiver and bodyguard, a cover story that gave him legitimate access to their home and schedule while allowing him to watch for threats. He moved through her world like a ghost, cataloging exits and vulnerabilities, seeing danger in every shadow. The Parker mansion sat in an exclusive neighborhood where the houses had gates and the silence was expensive. Emily's room overlooked a garden that probably cost more to maintain than Jack's yearly income. and security cameras dotted the property like mechanical sentries. But Jack knew cameras could be disabled, guards could be bribed, and walls only kept out the threats you could see coming. He spent his days with Emily, playing quiet games and reading books while his mind worked through scenarios. She asked him questions about everything: why the sky was blue, how birds knew where to fly, whether he believed in second chances. That last one made him pause. "I think," he said carefully, "that second chances are something you have to earn, not something you just get because you want them." Emily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Then you must have earned yours. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here helping us." The simple faith in her voice made Jack want to weep. His evenings were spent with Olivia, going over Raymond Scott's known associates, his habits, his weaknesses. She was sharp and focused, asking the right questions, never letting emotion cloud her judgment, but Jack could see the fear underneath. Every time her phone rang, every unexpected noise, she flinched. "Tell me about the night your wife died," Olivia said on the third evening. They were in her home office, surrounded by files and photographs. "Tell me what really happened." Jack didn't want to revisit that memory, but he owed her the truth. "I took Raymond's money to look the other way during a raid. His brother was dealing drugs, and Raymond wanted him out before the arrest. I falsified paperwork, created a gap in surveillance. The brother panicked, got into a firefight with another unit, and died." He paused, the rest of the story rising like bile. 3 months later, I came home and found my wife bleeding out on our doorstep. She'd been shot execution style. The investigating officers called it a random mugging, but I knew. There was a note in her hand, written in Raymond's handwriting. It said, "Now you know what it costs." Olivia's face had gone pale. "And you didn't tell anyone." "Who would believe me? Raymond Scott was already dead according to official records. I had no proof. And if I admitted I'd recognized his handwriting, I'd have to explain why, which meant confessing to corruption and getting sent to prison." His voice cracked. "So I kept quiet, got myself fired for being drunk on duty, and tried to disappear. Tried to be someone Mia could depend on. But she just sees a coward who couldn't save her mother." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the desk and gripped his hand. "You're here now. That's what matters." But was it? Jack wasn't sure anymore. That night, lying on the guest room bed and staring at the ceiling, he thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Raymond Scott wasn't just coming for revenge. He was coming to prove a point, to show Jack that no matter how far he ran, the past would always catch up, to demonstrate that every person Jack cared about was vulnerable, including Mia. The thought made him sit up abruptly. Mia. He'd left her with Mrs. Cora, the neighbor who sometimes watched her when he worked late. She was safe, he told himself. Raymond didn't know about her, didn't know where Jack lived now. But certainty felt like quicksand, and Jack couldn't shake the cold dread settling into his bones. He grabbed his phone and called Mrs. Cora. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. He called again, and again. On the 4th try, someone picked up, but it wasn't Mrs. Chora. "Hello, Jack." Raymond Scott's voice was exactly as Jack remembered, smooth, cultured, with an edge like a razor wrapped in silk. "It's been a long time." Jack's blood turned to ice. "Where's my daughter?" "Safe for now." There was a smile in Raymond's voice, the kind predators wore when they had prey cornered. "Your neighbor is sleeping peacefully, by the way. Just a mild sedative. I'm not a monster, Jack. I only hurt the people who deserve it. If you touch Mia, you'll what? Turn yourself in? Call the police? We both know how well that worked last time." Raymond's tone hardened. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to deliver something to me. The formula Olivia Parker has been developing, the heart medication worth billions on the black market. You have 12 hours to bring it to me. along with 50 million in bearer bonds from her company safe. Do that, and you get your daughter back. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't access that kind of money or steal corporate formulas. Olivia would never. Then I guess you'll have to be persuasive. Or creative. I don't particularly care which. Raymond paused. Oh, and Jack. I have Emily, too. Grabbed her from the garden about an hour ago. Your security cameras have a convenient blind spot near the south wall. Jack's heart stopped. So now Olivia has to choose. Help you save both girls, or watch you scramble while I make her little girl disappear forever. Tick-tock. The line went dead. For 10 seconds, Jack couldn't move. His brain simply refused to process what he just heard. Then training kicked in. Cold, methodical. The part of him that used to be a good cop before corruption rotted him from the inside. He sprinted down the hallway to Olivia's office and burst through the door without knocking. She looked up, startled, and whatever she saw in his face made her stand up immediately. What happened? Raymond has both girls, Mia and Emily. He wants the formula and $50 million. We have 12 hours. Olivia's face went sheet white, but her voice stayed steady. Then we give him what he wants. It won't matter. He'll kill them anyway. That's his play. Make us desperate. Make us deliver what he wants. Then take everything. Jack was pacing now, his mind tearing through options and discarding them. He wants me to know I failed again. He wants you to suffer for firing him, for being successful, for being everything his brother could have been. We need to find where he's keeping them. Olivia was already moving, pulling up programs on her computer. Emily has a medical alert device sewn into her jacket. It's GPS-enabled for emergencies. She typed frantically, and a map bloomed on the screen. A red dot pulsed in an industrial area across town, near the old manufacturing district where buildings sat abandoned and city oversight was minimal. There, Olivia breathed. That's where she is. Jack studied the location. It's a trap. He knows about the tracker, which means he's counting on us coming. He'll have people, weapons, contingency plans. Then we call the police. Right now we have proof. We have a GPS signal and my word against a dead man's. Jack shook his head. By the time we convince anyone to move, it'll be too late. Raymond's smart. He'll have a deadline, a trigger. The second those 12 hours are up, the girls are gone. Olivia's hands clenched into fists. Then what do we do? Jack looked at this strong, brilliant woman who'd built an empire, but couldn't protect her daughter from the ghosts of his past, and made a decision. You're going to call someone with real power, someone you trust completely, FBI if you have that connection. Tell them everything. Show them Raymond's photo, the GPS, my testimony. Get them moving, even if it takes time. And what are you going to do? I'm going to get our daughters back. Olivia stepped toward him. Not alone. You can't. Yes, alone. Because Raymond wants me, not you. If you show up, he'll know we didn't bring the formula, and he'll kill them just to make a point. But if I show up, Jack felt something cold and certain settle over him. If I show up and offer him what he really wants, me confessing everything, begging for mercy, maybe I can buy enough time for your FBI friends to arrive. Maybe I can distract him long enough to get the girls out. That's suicide. Maybe, Jack managed a grim smile. But I've been dead for 10 years anyway. At least this way, it means something. Olivia grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You don't get to play martyr and call it redemption, Jack Reeves. You want to save those girls? Fine. But you do it smart, and you do it with backup. And you dare die before we win. You understand me? Jack saw tears in her eyes, saw the fear and the rage and the desperate hope all tangled together. He thought about his wife, about all the ways he'd failed her. He thought about Mia growing up thinking her father was a coward. and he thought about Emily asking him if he believed in second chances. "I understand," he said quietly. "Make your calls. I'll stall as long as I can." Olivia pulled out her phone, already dialing. As Jack turned to leave, she called after him. "Jack, that medication I'm developing? The heart formula Raymond wants?" He paused at the door. "The research is years from completion. Whatever he thinks he'll get, whatever he thinks he'll sell, it doesn't exist yet. He's chasing smoke, but he doesn't need to know that." Jack nodded slowly. Raymond Scott was risking everything for a formula that couldn't even be manufactured. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Jack took Olivia's car, faster than his ancient truck, and drove through the empty streets with his headlights off until the industrial district swallowed him whole. The building where Emily's tracker signal originated was a hulking concrete shell, 4 stories of broken windows and rust-streaked walls. He parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot, every sense hyper-alert. The night smelled like oil and decay. Distant sirens echoed somewhere, but they might as well have been on another planet. This was the kind of place where people disappeared, where violence happened in shadows and nobody looked too closely. The main entrance was chained shut, but a side door hung open like an invitation. Jack slipped inside, moving through the darkness with the muscle memory of 1,000 crime scenes. Somewhere above him he heard voices, a child crying. Mia. His heart clenched as he climbed the stairs 2 at a time, silent as smoke, and emerged into a vast empty floor where moonlight spilled through shattered skylights. Raymond Scott stood in the center of the space, looking exactly as he had 10 years ago, except for the gray threading through his hair. He smiled when he saw Jack. "Right on time. I'd say you're predictable, but we both know it's just that you care too much. That was always your weakness." Jack's eyes swept the room, cataloging threats. 2 men flanked Raymond, both armed. Mia and Emily were tied to chairs near the far wall, both crying, but alive. Relief hit him so hard he nearly staggered. "Let them go, Raymond. This is between us." "Is it?" Raymond began to circle, lazy and confident. "See, I've been thinking about that for 10 years, about what justice really looks like. I could have killed you quickly, Jack. Could have put a bullet in your head the night I killed your wife. But where's the lesson in that?" He spread his hands. "I wanted you to live with what you'd done, to wake up every day knowing you destroyed your family for a few $1,000s, to watch your daughter grow up hating you. That's real punishment." Jack forced himself to stay calm. "You got your revenge. Now let the girls go, and I'll give you whatever you want." "Whatever I want." Raymond laughed, and the sound echoed off empty walls. "What I want is my brother back. What I want is the life you stole from me. Can you give me that, Jack?" "No, but I can give you the truth. Your brother died because he made bad choices, because he thought dealing drugs and hurting people had no consequences. I made it easier for him to run, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But his death isn't on me. It's on him, and you know it." Something flickered across Raymond's face, rage or recognition. Jack couldn't tell which. Then it hardened into something uglier. "The truth," Raymond said softly, "is that you're a corrupt cop who sold his soul and got people killed." He pulled a gun from his jacket and pointed it at Emily. "And now you're going to watch me take everything else you care about, starting with these 2 innocent girls. Unless you want to beg, Jack. Unless you want to get on your knees and tell me how sorry you are. Maybe that's worth something." Jack didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees, hands raised. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for taking your money, for failing your brother, for being too much of a coward to make it right. You win, Raymond. Just please don't hurt them." Raymond studied him for a long moment, and Jack saw the calculation happening. This was what Raymond wanted. Total submission, complete victory. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough because grief didn't work that way. You couldn't balance the scales with pain. You couldn't bring the dead back by creating more death. Do you know what the worst part is? Raymond said, his voice shaking slightly. I actually believe you're sorry. I believe you regret what you did. But it doesn't matter, Jack, because sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't give me my brother back. He cocked the gun. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to watch me shoot one of these girls. Then you'll have 5 minutes to decide which one lives. Your choice. Your punishment. Time seemed to slow down. Jack saw Raymond's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Mia's tear-streaked face, her eyes wide with terror, saw Emily trembling in her chair, trying so hard to be brave, and he saw with perfect clarity what he had to do. He launched himself forward with every ounce of strength he had, closing the distance between him and Raymond in 3 long strides. The gun went off, a deafening crack in the enclosed space, and Jack felt fire tear through his shoulder. But momentum carried him forward, and he crashed into Raymond, sending them both sprawling. They hit the concrete hard, and the gun skittered away. Jack, half blind with pain, drove his fist into Raymond's face once, twice, 3 times. Blood filled his mouth, his own or Raymond's, he couldn't tell. Behind him, he heard shouts and running feet. Raymond's men coming to their boss's aid. Jack grabbed Raymond by the collar and hauled him up, using him as a human shield. Back off, his voice was raw. Back off, or I break his neck right here. The men hesitated, weapons raised, caught between following orders and protecting their employer. In that frozen moment, Jack heard the sweetest sound of his life. Sirens, multiple sirens, getting closer. Olivia's FBI contact had come through after all. It's over, Raymond, Jack said, his voice thick with exhaustion and blood loss. You can kill me, but you're not touching those girls. Not today, not ever. Raymond's expression twisted into something between fury and despair. For just a second, Jack thought he saw his old adversary in there. The man before grief had poisoned him. Then it was gone, replaced by cold hatred. This isn't over. It'll never be over. The rest of his threat was cut off as FBI agents poured into the building, tactical lights and shouted commands filling the space. Jack released Raymond and stumbled towards Mia, his legs barely holding him. He fell to his knees in front of her chair and fumbled with the ropes binding her wrists. His hands were shaking too badly to work the knots. Then Olivia was there, pushing him aside gently and freeing both girls with quick, efficient movements. Mia threw herself into Jack's arms, sobbing against his good shoulder, and he held her with his working arm while the world tilted sideways. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry for everything. You came for me, Mia said, her voice muffled. You always came. Always, Jack promised. I'll always come for you. Across the room, Olivia had Emily wrapped in her arms, both of them crying. FBI agents were cuffing Raymond Scott and reading him his rights. Jack heard phrases like kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon, and fugitive from justice. But they seemed distant and unimportant. What mattered was that the girls were safe. What mattered was that for once, finally, he'd done something right. An EMT appeared at his elbow, trying to examine his shoulder, but Jack waved them off. The girls first. Make sure they're okay. Olivia looked over at him, and their eyes met across the chaotic space. In that moment, Jack saw understanding pass between them. 2 parents who'd faced the worst thing imaginable and come out the other side. Not unscathed, but alive. Together. Thank you, Olivia mouthed. Jack just nodded. He didn't have the words yet. Maybe he never would. As the FBI led Raymond Scott away in handcuffs, the man looked back one last time. Jack expected to see hatred, expected more threats or curses. But what he saw was something else. Exhaustion. Release. Like a man who'd been carrying a weight for so long that he'd forgotten what freedom felt like. It's done, Raymond said quietly, and Jack wasn't sure if he was talking to him or to the ghost of his brother. It's finally done. Then he was gone, swallowed by federal custody and a legal system that would ensure he never threatened anyone again. Jack let the EMTs work on his shoulder, let them bandage and stabilize and mutter about surgery. Mia stayed pressed against his side the whole time, and he kept his good arm around her, anchoring them both to this moment. Olivia sat nearby with Emily, who had fallen asleep against her mother's chest. When their eyes met again, Olivia smiled, tired and fragile, but genuine. I'm going to recommend you for a civilian commendation. What I did tonight was what anyone would do, Jack interrupted. Olivia shook her head. No, it's what a hero does. It's what a good man does, even when he thinks he stopped being good a long time ago. Jack wanted to argue, wanted to list all the ways he'd failed and fallen short, but Mia squeezed his hand and whispered, Dad. She hadn't called him that in 3 years. He looked down at her, and she looked back with eyes that still held hurt, but also something new. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of forgiveness. Yeah, sweetheart. Can we go home now? Home. Such a simple word, but it felt like the most important thing anyone had ever said to him. Yeah, Jack said, his voice rough. Let's go home. The weeks that followed were a strange kind of limbo where nothing felt quite real. Jack's shoulder healed slowly. Physical therapy sessions punctuated by visits from FBI agents taking statements and building their case against Raymond Scott. The media picked up the story, corrupt cop turned hero, wealthy CEO's daughter rescued. But Olivia used her considerable influence to keep the details vague and the cameras away from the girls. What mattered more were the small changes. Mia started talking to him again. Really talking. About school and friends and the nightmares she still had about the night in that warehouse. Jack listened and apologized and tried to be present in a way he hadn't managed since her mother died. It wasn't easy. Some days Mia still looked at him with suspicion, still flinched away from his touch. But other days she'd climb into his lap while he did paperwork for the diner, and they'd sit in comfortable silence that felt like progress. Olivia became a regular at the diner, bringing Emily in for hot chocolate and grilled cheese sandwiches that became their ritual. She and Jack talked about their daughters, about Raymond Scott's trial, about all the ways life could break you down and build you back up differently. Gradually, something shifted between them. Not romance exactly, but connection, understanding, the recognition that they'd walked through fire together and come out branded by the same flames. One afternoon, 6 weeks after the rescue, Olivia showed up with an unexpected proposition. She slid a folder across the diner counter while Mia and Emily played checkers in the corner booth, their laughter punctuating the afternoon quiet. I'm starting a new division at Parker Pharmaceuticals, Olivia said. Corporate security and risk management. I need someone to head it up. Someone who understands how criminals think, who can see threats before they materialize. Someone I can trust completely. Jack stared at the folder without opening it. Olivia, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not qualified. You saved my daughter's life. You risked everything when you had every reason to walk away. You're exactly what I need. She leaned forward. Jack, I'm not offering this out of gratitude or pity. I'm offering it because you're good at this, because you understand security in a way most people never will, and because I think you could use a second chance at the career you lost. Jack opened the folder slowly. Inside was a job description, a salary that made his head spin, and a personal note in Olivia's handwriting. Everyone deserves the chance to prove who they really are. He thought about the diner, about the quiet life he'd built from the wreckage of his old one. He thought about Mia and whether uprooting her again would cause more harm than good, but mostly he thought about the man he'd been 10 years ago. The detective who'd let corruption poison him, who'd made choices he could never take back. Maybe Olivia was right. Maybe this was his chance to prove that man didn't have to be who he became. I need to talk to Mia first, Jack said finally. Need to make sure she's okay with this. Olivia smiled. Of course. Take your time. That evening, Jack sat Mia down in their small apartment above the diner and laid out Olivia's offer. He explained what the job would mean: better money, different hours, the chance to do work that mattered. Mia listened with that serious expression she'd inherited from her mother, the one that meant she was thinking hard about something. Would we have to move? She asked. Jack shook his head. Not if you don't want to. We could stay here, or we could find someplace new. It's up to you. Mia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Do you want to do it? Take the job? I want to be someone you're proud of, Jack said carefully. I want to prove that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define you forever. You already proved that. Mia's voice was small but certain. When you saved me and Emily, when you fought that bad man even though you were scared, that's when I knew you were still my dad. The real one, not the sad one who couldn't look at me. Jack felt his eyes burn. I'm sorry I was that person for so long. I'm sorry you had to grow up watching me fall apart. But you put yourself back together. Mia reached out and took his hand. And if this job helps you keep being better, then I think you should take it. Besides, Emily's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing her more. The next morning, Jack called Olivia and accepted the job. 2 months later, Jack Reeves walked into Parker Pharmaceuticals wearing his first suit in a decade, feeling like an imposter in borrowed clothes. But Olivia met him in the lobby with Emily, who'd drawn him a welcome card covered in glitter and misspelled encouragement. And Mia had hugged him extra tight that morning, whispering, Good luck, Dad, against his shoulder. He thought about Raymond Scott serving multiple life sentences in federal prison. They'd exchanged one letter after the trial, Raymond writing to say he didn't forgive Jack, but understood why he'd done what he did, that saving those girls didn't erase the past, but maybe it balanced the scales a little. Jack had written back with the only truth he knew, that carrying guilt was easy, but carrying change was harder, that redemption wasn't a moment, but a choice you made every single day, that he'd spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of the second chance he'd been given. Standing in Parker Pharmaceuticals that first day, surrounded by the hum of progress and possibility, Jack understood something fundamental. The past didn't disappear. His wife was still gone, his mistakes still made, his corruption still real. But the present was happening now, and the future was unwritten. He had a daughter who trusted him again. He had work that mattered. He had Olivia's friendship and Emily's laughter, and the slow, painful, beautiful process of becoming someone he could respect. That evening, he picked Mia up from school and took her to their favorite park. They sat on the swings as the sun set, not saying much, just being together. Dad, Mia said after a while. Yeah? I'm glad you didn't give up, even when things were really bad. I'm glad you kept trying. Jack felt something unlock in his chest, some last piece of frozen grief finally beginning to thaw. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They swung higher, their shadows stretching long across the grass. Above them, the sky turned gold and purple, and somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with countless lives intersecting and diverging. Jack thought about all the choices that had led him here, the good ones and the terrible ones, the moments of weakness and the moments of strength. He thought about the girl he'd found sitting in the rain and how that single act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that changed everything. Second chances, he realized, weren't about forgetting who you'd been. They were about remembering and choosing to be better anyway. They were about looking at your worst self and saying, not anymore. They were about the slow, unglamorous work of showing up every day and trying to do right by the people who still believed in you. Race you to the top, Mia called, pumping her legs harder. Jack laughed and matched her pace, and for the first time in 10 years, he felt something that might have been joy. Not happiness. Exactly. That was still too distant, too tangled up with loss. But joy, the kind that existed in moments, in the sound of his daughter's laughter and the warmth of the setting sun. The kind that said, "You're still here, you're still fighting, and that matters." They swung until the streetlights flickered on and the park emptied around them. When they finally walked home, Jack reached out and took Mia's hand, and she let him. It was enough. It was more than enough.